Do you ever think about those Christmas traditions from the 1970s? The ones so woven into family life that forgetting them seems impossible? These rituals shaped how we celebrated and how children dreamed. So what happened to the customs we thought would last forever? Stringing popcorn and cranberries by hand for the Christmas tree was one of those rituals that turned an ordinary December evening into something families looked forward to all year. Parents would pop a huge bowl of plain white popcorn, spread it across the kitchen table, and hand each child a needle threaded with sturdy string. The goal was simple: pierce each kernel carefully, slide it down, then follow with a bright red cranberry that stained your fingers and made everything smell faintly of tart winter fruit. Kids would sit for hours, sometimes competing to see who could create the longest strand, sometimes just talking quietly while the radio played carols. There was no rushing it, no shortcut, and no store-bought version that could match the satisfaction of draping your own handmade garland across the branches. The popcorn always broke if you pushed too hard, and the cranberries rolled off the table constantly, but that was part of the charm. Families did this together because it felt meaningful, because it slowed everything down. Today, popcorn garlands are rare sights, replaced by plastic beads that never demand patience or togetherness. Waiting all year for the Sears wish book to arrive was a childhood ritual that made September feel like the true start of Christmas. The moment that thick catalog landed on the doorstep, children across America dropped whatever they were doing and scrambled to claim it first. The pages were glossy, the toy section endless, and every photograph promised a world of wonder that seemed almost too good to be real. Kids would circle items with crayons, fold down corners, and spend hours imagining which toys might actually appear under the tree. Parents used it strategically, letting children dream big while quietly noting which pages got the most attention. The wish book was not just a catalog, it was a planning document for the entire holiday season, a shared reference that sparked conversations and negotiations. Siblings would argue over who got to hold it, and grandparents would flip through just to see what the younger generation wanted. When online shopping replaced catalogs, the wish book quietly disappeared, and with it went a tradition that turned anticipation into an art form. Those who grew up circling pages still remember the weight of that book and the thrill of imagining Christmas morning months before it arrived. Recording Christmas specials off the television was an event that required planning, patience, and a willingness to sit beside the VCR with your finger hovering over the pause button. In the 1970s, holiday specials aired once a year, and if you missed them, you waited 12 whole months for another chance. Families gathered around the television with blank tapes ready, determined to capture every second of Rudolph, Frosty, or the Grinch before the next commercial interrupted. The person in charge of the remote became the hero of the evening, stopping the recording just before ads and resuming the moment the show returned. Most tapes ended up with bits of commercials spliced between scenes, but nobody cared. Those imperfect recordings became treasures, watched over and over until the tape wore thin and the picture started to wobble. Kids memorized every line, every song, and every pause where someone had fumbled the remote. There was pride in owning a collection of Christmas specials, even if the quality was grainy. Streaming killed that tradition entirely, making everything available instantly and removing the urgency that once made December broadcasts feel sacred. Placing real oranges and walnuts inside stockings was a tradition that connected 1970s children to generations who came before them, even if they did not fully understand why. Grandparents spoke of times when fresh fruit in winter was a genuine luxury, something rare enough to feel like a gift rather than a grocery item. Parents carried the tradition forward, tucking bright oranges into the toe of each stocking and scattering walnuts throughout the folds. Children woke on Christmas morning and felt the weight of something round at the very bottom, often pulling it out with confusion before realizing it was fruit, not a toy. The orange smelled incredible, sweet and sharp against the cold morning air, and the walnuts required effort to crack, turning breakfast into a small adventure. The tradition was simple, affordable, and carried meaning deeper than any store-bought item. It reminded families that Christmas was once about abundance in small forms, about gratitude for what the season provided. Today, stockings overflow with plastic trinkets, but the memory of peeling that first Christmas orange lingers for anyone lucky enough to have experienced it. Building nativity scenes with hand-painted ceramic figures was a December ritual that transformed coffee tables, mantels, and windowsills into sacred little worlds. Families unwrapped each piece carefully, setting Mary and Joseph in place first, then adding shepherds, wise men, and animals one by one as the days counted down to Christmas. The figures were often chipped from years of handling, their paint faded in spots that only made them feel more beloved. Some sets had been passed down through generations, arriving in boxes lined with tissue paper that smelled like old storage and quiet reverence. Children loved arranging the animals, debating where the donkey should stand or whether the sheep looked better near the manger. The baby Jesus figure was always saved for last, placed in the tiny cradle only on Christmas Eve as a way of marking the moment the celebration truly began. These scenes were not just decorations. They were stories told in miniature, lessons about patience and the meaning behind the holiday rush. The ritual of setting them up year after year created memories no store-bought perfection could ever match, grounding Christmas in something older than tinsel or wrapping paper. Using bubble lights that actually bubbled on the tree was one of those small wonders that made 1970s Christmas trees feel alive in ways modern LED strands never replicate. These lights had glass tubes filled with colored liquid that slowly started bubbling once the bulb beneath them warmed up, creating a hypnotic display children could stare at for hours. Families waited patiently after plugging in the tree, watching as the first bubble rose through the liquid and more followed until the entire tree seemed to shimmer with motion. The colors were vivid, the effect almost magical, and the gentle heat from each bulb added warmth that balanced cold December nights. Kids would lie on the floor beneath the branches, looking up at the bubbling tubes like tiny lava lamps scattered among the ornaments. Parents warned against touching them because they got hot, but that only made them more fascinating. These lights required patience to warm up, and not every bulb bubbled evenly, giving each one its own personality. Modern safety standards eventually pushed bubble lights to the margins, replaced by cooler options that never captured the same wonder. Sending handwritten Christmas cards to every relative was a December project that consumed entire evenings and filled kitchen tables with envelopes, stamps, and carefully chosen cards. Families kept address books thick with names, some crossed out and updated as people moved, tracking decades of relationships in penciled notes. Mothers often led the effort, but everyone was expected to sign their name or add a short message, turning each card into a tiny family portrait delivered through the mail. Choosing the right card for each person mattered, because a funny card for a serious aunt could spark quiet holiday drama. The process took weeks, with cards stacked in piles waiting for stamps, each representing a connection that might otherwise go unspoken all year. Receiving cards in return felt like a small victory, and many families displayed them on mantels or strings, turning their collection into a visible measure of their social world. There was pride in a mailbox full of envelopes during December. Email and social media slowly erased this tradition, replacing handwritten notes with digital messages that arrive and vanish without ever being held. Those who remember licking stamps know something irreplaceable was lost. Hanging homemade stockings knitted by Grandma was a tradition that made each child feel uniquely loved in ways no store-bought stocking could match. These were not perfect machine-stitched creations with flawless lettering, but handmade works featuring crooked names, uneven stitches, and color combinations only a grandmother would choose. Every family member had their own, personalized down to the smallest detail, and the stockings grew more treasured each year. Children learned early that their stocking was special because someone spent hours creating it, counting stitches by lamplight. The wool smelled faintly of the closet where it was stored 11 months of the year, and pulling it out each December felt like reuniting with an old friend. Some stockings had patches where holes had been mended, evidence of years beside fireplaces. Grandmothers who made them often did not live forever, and when they passed, those stockings became irreplaceable heirlooms. Families hung them long after the original recipients grew up, passing them to new generations who heard stories about the woman who made them. Today, mass-produced stockings dominate, but anyone who owns a handmade one knows it carries meaning money cannot buy. Watching the Yule log broadcast for hours without changing the channel was one of those strange 1970s traditions that made perfect sense at the time and baffles people today. Television stations would air footage of a crackling fireplace, sometimes for the entire morning, offering families without real fireplaces a visual substitute that felt cozy and festive. People left it on during breakfast, while opening presents, or simply as background ambiance while the household buzzed with activity. The fire never changed, the logs never shifted dramatically, and yet families watched with genuine contentment, letting the flickering flames fill their living rooms with warmth they could almost feel. Children stared at the screen wondering if the fire would ever go out, while adults appreciated the calm it brought to chaotic mornings. There was no plot, no dialogue, just the steady crackle of burning wood repeated on a loop. Some families made it a point of pride to keep the Yule log on all day, as if changing the channel would break the spell. The tradition faded as programming options multiplied, but those who remember it recall a time when television could offer peace instead of noise. Making paper chain countdowns to mark the days until Christmas was a craft project that turned December into a visual journey every child could follow. Families cut strips of red and green construction paper, looped them together with glue, and hung the chain somewhere prominent where everyone could watch it shrink as the holiday approached. Each morning, a child would tear off one link, feeling the chain grow lighter and Christmas grow closer with every satisfying rip. The countdown became a ritual, something to look forward to before breakfast, a tiny ceremony that made waiting feel active. Some families made chains long enough to stretch across rooms, while others kept them modest for the final week. Teachers assigned the project in classrooms, sending children home with colorful loops that parents hung beside the tree. There was something satisfying about watching progress happen one link at a time, knowing exactly how many days remained. Advent calendars with chocolates eventually replaced these chains, trading handmade effort for store-bought convenience. Anyone who remembers tearing off that final loop on Christmas Eve knows the anticipation carried magic no purchased calendar could replicate. Baking cookies in Toy Easy. Bake ovens was a rite of passage for children who wanted to feel like real grown-ups in the kitchen without anyone hovering too closely. These small plastic ovens used a light bulb to generate just enough heat to turn tiny packets of batter into miniature treats that tasted more like accomplishment than actual dessert. Kids would mix the powder with water, pour it into little pans, slide them into the glowing slot, and wait with the kind of patience only Christmas anticipation could rival. The cookies came out slightly undercooked or slightly burnt, but nobody cared because the magic was in the making, not the eating. Parents loved these ovens because they kept children busy for hours, while real holiday baking happened nearby. The smell of warm dough drifted from the tiny appliance, mixing with the scent of pine needles and cinnamon from the kitchen. Some children even wrapped their creations as gifts, presenting lopsided cookies to grandparents who pretended they were delicious. Today, safety concerns and changing toy trends have pushed these ovens to the fringes, but anyone who spent a December afternoon baking under a light bulb knows the pride that came from those imperfect little sweets. Wrapping presents in newspaper comics was one of those clever shortcuts that turned thriftiness into something unexpectedly charming. Families saved the Sunday funnies for weeks leading up to Christmas, flattening the colorful pages and stacking them beside the tape and scissors. Kids loved unwrapping gifts wrapped in their favorite comic strips, pausing to read a panel before tearing through to the present inside. The paper was thin, crinkled easily, and sometimes tore in awkward places, but it had personality no department store roll could match. Parents appreciated how the comics stretched the holiday budget, turning free newsprint into festive packaging guests always noticed. Some families made it a tradition, refusing to use anything else and proudly displaying their colorful pile of mismatched presents. The ink sometimes smudged onto fingers, but nobody minded. There was something warm about seeing Snoopy or Garfield stretched across a box meant for someone you loved. As newspapers shrank and Sunday editions grew thinner, this tradition faded away. but the memory of unwrapping a gift and laughing at a comic strip before seeing what was inside remains a small, happy piece of Christmas past. Caroling door to door after supper was one of those traditions that made the cold December air feel warmer simply because you were sharing it with neighbors. Families bundled up in scarves and mittens, grabbed songbooks or relied on memory, and walked from porch to porch singing carols that echoed off snow-covered lawns. Neighbors opened their doors with surprise and delight, sometimes joining for a verse, sometimes pressing cookies into small gloved hands. The singing was rarely perfect, voices cracking on high notes and children giggling through verses. But perfection was never the point. The point was connection, the kind that only happens when people show up unannounced with nothing to offer but a song. Streetlights glowed overhead, breath turned to mist, and for a few hours the neighborhood felt like a single extended family. Parents taught children lyrics passed down for generations, and singing them aloud in the dark created memories that outlasted any gift. Today, caroling has become rare, replaced by busy schedules and concerns about knocking on strangers' doors. But anyone who walked those cold streets with a chorus of voices still remembers the feeling of belonging to something larger. Serving homemade fruitcake to guests was a Christmas tradition that divided families and neighborhoods into passionate camps of lovers and skeptics. Grandmothers spent weeks soaking dried fruits in rum or brandy, folding them into dense batter, and baking loaves that could double as doorstops if left unattended too long. The cakes arrived at gatherings wrapped in cloth and tied with ribbon, presented with pride that demanded at least a polite taste from everyone. Some people genuinely loved the intense sweetness, the chewy fruit, and the boozy warmth that spread through each bite. Others quietly pushed their slices around, waiting for the right moment to hide them beneath a napkin. The fruitcake became a symbol of effort, a way of saying someone spent real time preparing something special. Recipes were guarded like family secrets, passed down through generations. Regifting fruitcake became a quiet tradition of its own, with some cakes traveling from house to house for years. Today, fruitcake has faded into the background, replaced by lighter desserts. But for those who loved them, and even those who only pretended to, fruitcake remains a reminder of an era when effort mattered more than convenience. Playing Christmas records on the turntable was a ritual that turned the living room into a concert hall filled with warmth and crackling static. Families would pull out favorite albums each December, sliding the vinyl from its sleeve with care reserved for fragile heirlooms. The needle would drop, a soft hiss would fill the room, and suddenly Bing Crosby or Nat King Cole was singing as if stopping by personally to celebrate. Kids learned early how to handle records properly, balancing them on fingertips and placing them gently on the spinning platter. The ritual of flipping the record halfway through became part of the experience, a pause that gave everyone time to refill drinks or check on the roast. Scratches and skips added character to songs that had been played dozens of times, familiar imperfections that became part of the music. Parents sang along without embarrassment, and grandparents closed their eyes and drifted back to Christmases from their own childhood. Streaming replaced turntables with convenience, but something intangible was lost when the ritual disappeared. Those who grew up placing needles on vinyl still remember how playing a record made every carol feel like an event worth gathering for. Hanging real mistletoe over doorways was a holiday tradition that added a playful hint of romance to even the most ordinary family gathering. Bundles of the waxy green plant with its white berries appeared in stores each December, and families hung them from door frames with red ribbon, waiting to see who might get caught underneath. The rules were simple. If two people stood beneath the mistletoe, a kiss was expected, whether a quick peck on the cheek or something that made relatives cheer. Kids loved watching adults blush and dodge, while teenagers secretly maneuvered themselves into position with whoever they had been eyeing. The mistletoe became a focal point of the party, a spot everyone noticed and navigated with varying degrees of intention. Some families hung it in the same spot every year, turning that doorway into a landmark of holiday memory. Over time, concerns about the plant being mildly toxic to pets, combined with the awkwardness of forced affection, pushed mistletoe out of fashion. but anyone who remembers standing beneath those waxy leaves, heart pounding with anticipation, knows it added magic that plastic decorations could never replicate. Attending candlelit midnight mass was a Christmas Eve tradition that made even the sleepiest child feel the weight of something sacred and ancient. Families dressed in their finest clothes drove through quiet streets and entered churches glowing with the soft light of flickering candles. The air smelled of pine, melted wax, and the faint perfume of neighbors pressed close on wooden pews. Children fought to stay awake, heads drooping onto parents' shoulders before snapping upright at the sound of the choir. The service moved slowly, filled with readings and hymns that stretched across centuries, connecting everyone to believers who had gathered the same way for generations. At some point, small candles were passed from person to person, flames traveling through the congregation until the entire room glowed with individual lights held carefully. There was power in that moment, a reminder that each person was part of something larger. Parents watched their children's faces illuminated by candlelight and saw the same wonder they had felt at the same age. Today, midnight mass has grown less common as schedules shift, but those who attended still remember the hush that fell when the clock struck 12. Opening one gift on Christmas Eve was the compromise every child dreamed about, and every parent eventually surrendered to at least once. The anticipation of waiting until morning felt impossible when presents sat glowing beneath the tree, and one carefully chosen gift became the bridge between the endless evening and Christmas morning magic. Parents would select something small, maybe pajamas or a book, something that extended excitement without giving away real treasures. Children would tear off the paper with trembling hands, knowing this single gift was their only taste of what tomorrow would bring. Some families turned it into a ceremony, gathering around the tree with cocoa and letting each child choose which wrapped box would be theirs. The unwrapping became a performance, with everyone watching and drawing out the moment. For kids, that single gift made the final hours before bed bearable, something to hold while dreams of morning danced through their heads. The tradition created its own anticipation, a promise kept each year that made Christmas Eve feel almost as special as Christmas Day. Those who grew up with this ritual remember how it made waiting feel like part of the celebration. Salt dough ornaments handmade by children were treasures that hung on Christmas trees long after their creators had grown up and moved away. The recipe was simple, just flour, salt, and water mixed into stiff dough that small hands could shape into stars, bells, or lumpy creations that defied description. Parents helped roll the dough flat, handed over cookie cutters, and poked holes for ribbon before baking the shapes until they hardened. Kids painted their ornaments in bright colors that sometimes dripped, then added glitter that ended up everywhere except where intended. Each ornament was unique, carrying fingerprints and imperfections that made it irreplaceable. Families hung them on the tree with pride, sometimes laughing at how a reindeer became a blob or a snowman melted into abstract art. Over the years, ornaments accumulated, each a snapshot of a child's age and skill at the moment of creation. Some cracked or chipped, making survivors even more precious. Parents kept them in special boxes, pulling them out each December to remember the sticky afternoons that produced them. These handmade ornaments carried more meaning than store-bought decorations because they held the presence of people who made them. Angel hair spun glass around the manger was one of those delicate decorations that made nativity scenes shimmer with an otherworldly glow. Families would carefully drape the wispy fibers over stable roofs, around ceramic figures, and beneath tiny mangers, creating the illusion of clouds or heavenly light descending on the scene. The material looked magical, catching light from nearby candles or tree bulbs and reflecting it in soft, scattered patterns. Children were warned not to touch it because the fine glass strands could irritate skin, which only made the angel hair seem more mysterious and precious. Adults handled it with bare hands anyway, gently pulling apart clumps and arranging them with patience the season seemed to encourage. Some families reused the same angel hair year after year, carefully repacking it in tissue paper. Others bought fresh packages, enjoying the ritual of opening something new that would transform their manger into a glowing centerpiece. Over time, safety concerns pushed real spun glass angel hair out of stores and the tradition faded. But for those who remember arranging it by hand, the shimmering strands remain a symbol of Christmas magic made visible. Leaving warm milk on a TV tray for Santa was a Christmas Eve ritual that turned the final hours before bed into something sacred. Children would carefully pour milk into a special glass, arrange cookies on a plate, and position everything near the fireplace or beside the tree. The TV tray became a tiny altar of anticipation, a signal that the household believed in something magical enough to deserve hospitality. Parents helped with the setup, making sure the milk stayed warm and the cookies looked inviting. Kids would check the tray one last time before heading to bed, whispering goodnight to the empty room, as if Santa might already be listening. The next morning, finding crumbs on the plate and an empty glass felt like proof that the world still held wonders beyond explanation. Some parents took bites with deliberately messy edges or left boot prints in flour near the hearth. The tradition taught children that generosity deserved acknowledgement, that even imaginary visitors should be welcomed with care. Today, the ritual continues, but those who remember the original TV tray setups know the magic felt strongest when belief came easy. Driving to look at neighborhood light displays was a December tradition that turned ordinary streets into glowing wonderlands worth traveling miles to see. Families would pile into the car after dinner, thermoses of cocoa in hand, and cruise slowly through neighborhoods known for elaborate decorations. Kids pressed their faces against cold windows, breath fogging the glass as they pointed out reindeer and nativity scenes. Parents drove at a crawl, sometimes circling the same block twice so everyone could get a better look. Some neighborhoods competed fiercely, each house trying to outshine the next, while others coordinated themes that turned streets into unified celebrations. The car became a warm cocoon moving through a world transformed by color and light, with carols playing softly and siblings arguing over who spotted the best house. There was no destination, just the journey, the pleasure of witnessing how neighbors expressed their spirit. Today, professional light shows have replaced many of these traditions. But anyone who remembers cruising past homes decorated by hand knows that the homemade glow carried warmth no commercial display could match. Wearing matching handmade sweaters from relatives was a Christmas morning tradition that united families in colorful, sometimes questionable knitwear. Aunts and grandmothers spent months creating sweaters featuring reindeer or snowflakes rendered in yarn combinations that defied fashion wisdom. Children opened these gifts with expressions carefully managed to hide disappointment, knowing that putting on the sweater was expected. The wool often itched, the fit rarely flattered, and the colors clashed with everything. But none of that mattered once the family photo was taken. Matching sweaters turned individuals into a unified team, visually declaring that these people belonged together. Parents wore theirs with exaggerated enthusiasm, modeling gratitude they hoped children would learn. Some families still have those photos displayed, frozen moments of forced smiles that somehow capture the warmth of the season. The tradition faded as store-bought ugly sweaters became ironic fashion statements. But anyone who wore a handmade sweater knitted specifically for them knows the difference between purchased humor and genuine love stitched into every row. Electric train sets circling the tree were the mechanical heartbeat of Christmas morning in countless 1970s living rooms. Fathers would spend hours on Christmas Eve assembling tracks, testing connections, and adjusting the transformer until the tiny locomotive hummed smoothly around its oval path. The train became a moving decoration, carrying miniature cargo past cotton snow and ceramic villages, while children watched with focused attention. Some sets had whistles that actually blew, smoke that puffed from tiny stacks, and crossing gates that lowered automatically as the train approached. Kids learned early not to touch the tracks while the power was on, a lesson that added danger to the otherwise cozy scene. The rhythmic clacking of wheels on track became background music to present opening, a sound that signaled Christmas had truly arrived. Fathers who had received trains as children passed the tradition forward, sharing not just the toy, but the patience required to keep it running. Modern sets have grown more sophisticated, but the charm of those simpler models circling beneath twinkling lights remains vivid. Dropping coins in Salvation Army kettles was a December ritual that taught children something important about the season before they could even name it. The red kettles appeared outside stores as reliably as snow, tended by bell ringers bundled in coats who smiled at every passing family. Parents would press coins into small hands and guide children toward the kettle, encouraging them to drop the money and hear it clink against metal. The sound was satisfying, a tiny percussion note in the symphony of holiday shopping. Kids learned that Christmas meant giving to strangers, that abundance carried responsibility. Some families made it a weekly tradition, stopping at the same kettle each trip until the bell ringer recognized them. The bell itself became synonymous with the season, its steady ring cutting through parking lot noise and calling attention to needs that might go unnoticed. Today, digital donations have made kettles less essential, but those who grew up dropping coins remember the weight of those offerings and the warmth from giving something away. The lesson stuck, shaping how a generation understood Christmas generosity. TV variety. Christmas specials made every living room feel like the front row of a show. From Donnie and Marie Osmond's sparkling duets to Bob Hope's heartfelt jokes, these broadcasts turned holiday nights into small screen events. Families gathered together in pajamas, popcorn bowls ready, as familiar faces sang carols under glittering stage lights. The sets looked magical. Fake snow falling in perfect rhythm, choirs swaying behind big smiles, and stars dressed in sequins that caught the camera's glow. It was glitzy and sentimental all at once, a snapshot of show business wrapped in red and green. Parents adored the humor, kids waited for the songs, and everyone joined in when the finale rolled around. Dolly Parton could bring a tear to even the toughest dad with her soft Tennessee drawl and silver microphone. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a tradition, a reminder that Christmas could make everyone pause together for one shared hour. When the credits rolled, the warmth in the room lingered longer than the applause. Before streaming, these specials were the heartbeat of television Christmas, fleeting, festive, and full of charm. The spirograph drawing set turned simple pens and gears into an art show of hypnotic precision. You would sit with paper, a handful of plastic rings, and colored pens, then watch as swirling loops and spirals formed in front of you. It felt like creating perfect chaos, patterns that looked too beautiful to be random but too intricate to plan. Every circle, curve, and line became a new discovery. For kids who loved art but wanted something beyond crayons, spirograph felt like science and creativity holding hands. It taught patience, coordination, and focus in a way that never felt like a lesson. Parents loved watching the quiet concentration it inspired, while kids felt proud of every page they filled. The rhythmic motion of the gears was oddly soothing, almost meditative. Each finished design was like capturing motion itself, frozen on paper in color and symmetry. In a noisy world, spirograph gave kids a calm space to create something mesmerizing. Even decades later, those delicate patterns remind us of a simpler time when wonder could come from nothing more than pen, paper, and the hum of imagination. The sound was unmistakable, a sharp, rhythmic clack-clack that echoed through playgrounds and living rooms like a call to battle. Clackers were two acrylic balls connected by a string, swung up and down until they collided with terrifying precision. In the 1970s, they were everywhere, in backpacks, in coat pockets, in secret stashes under school desks. You did not just own clackers, you trained with them. Kids turned into street performers, mastering the hypnotic rhythm until the balls moved like extensions of their hands. They bruised wrists, cracked knuckles, and left dents in drywall. But that was part of the fun. The danger made it cooler. Every successful round felt like victory. Every failed attempt, a dare to try again. You showed off your skills like a magician, daring others to match your speed. Parents worried. Teachers banned them. News reports claimed they could shatter and send shards flying. But still, we clacked. Because they were more than toys. They were rhythm, challenge, power. Today's toys are safer, quieter, more digital. But nothing ever felt quite as alive or as rebellious as two plastic spheres slamming together in your hands. Clackers taught you coordination, sure, but they also taught you the joy of risk. Teen Halloween dances in the 1980s were something out of a movie, literally. The gym was covered in orange and black streamers, paper bats hung from basketball hoops, and a fog machine turned the floor into a dreamlike swamp. The DJ played Thriller at least 5 times a night, and no one ever got tired of it. Couples slow danced under plastic skeletons, while teachers in vampire capes pretended not to notice kids sneaking soda from spiked punch bowls. Costume contests were the highlight, and the competition was fierce. You could not just show up in a mask, you needed lights, fake blood, and commitment. Even the shy kids got swept up in the excitement. There was something magical about the combination of cheap decorations, loud music, and the thrill of being seen in costume outside of class. It was goofy, awkward, and unforgettable, a night where everyone got to be a little wild behind the safety of makeup and masks. Those themed school dances made Halloween feel grown up, yet innocent all at once. Open flame candles on trees or windowsills were one of those Christmas traditions that felt romantic, peaceful, and even holy, depending on the home you were in. The soft flicker of the flame against the glass or the pine needles created a scene that looked straight out of an old storybook. Homes in the 1970s were filled with this quiet glow, the kind that wrapped every corner in a sense of warmth that electric lights could not quite match. Nobody sat there thinking about fire codes or ember spread or how quickly a dry pine tree could catch. People trusted their instinct, their attentiveness, and the sturdiness of a candle that had been burning quietly on the same windowsill every year. And for many families, that soft flame felt like a symbol, something sacred tied to the season itself. Today, though, this tradition is treated like a disaster waiting to happen. Fire departments warn against it, insurance companies forbid it, and entire neighborhoods would panic if they saw a real candle sitting beside a curtain or leaning toward a tree. The world has gotten safer, yes, but it has also gotten stricter. Sometimes you wonder what we lost in exchange for that safety. The glow is gone, replaced with bulbs and batteries and rules that have no room for a little risk. Maybe that is the real reason that old candlelight sticks with us, because it once told us that Christmas could be beautiful without being perfect. Candle carousels and spinning angels were delicate table treasures that whispered rather than shouted Christmas. A small flame beneath their silver wings made the angels spin, chiming a soft metallic song that danced through the quiet. The sound was so gentle that you had to stop talking just to hear it properly. It was the music of stillness, the kind that made children watch in awe and adults remember peace. The flicker of the candlelight shimmered on walls like halos moving in slow circles. Every family had one, sometimes passed down, sometimes bought at a church bazaar. You'd light it after dinner, the glow catching the gold of the angels as they turned above the table. The air filled with wax and warmth, the scent of pine and cinnamon close behind. It was fragile beauty, the kind that had to be handled carefully, but that fragility made it precious. Every spin felt like a tiny prayer that the season's calm would last a little longer. The candle carousel didn't fill a room, it filled a moment, and that was enough. Baby Alive was the doll that redefined what realistic play meant in the 1970s. She didn't just sit prettily on a shelf, she ate, drank, and yes, needed her diaper changed. For young children, that was revolutionary. Baby Alive gave kids their first taste of responsibility, teaching them how to care, nurture, and empathize, all while being wrapped in fun. Feeding her from that tiny spoon, watching her drink from the bottle, and then realizing what came next. It was all part of the charm. The doll was designed to mimic real life, and that made it irresistible. Kids loved the interactive nature of it, the sense that they were part of something grown-up and important. Parents found it both amusing and educational, a toy that blended playtime with lessons in care. Baby Alive became more than a doll. It was a friend, a student, and sometimes a test of patience. It reflected the era's growing fascination with realism in play and the idea that toys could teach as much as they entertained. And for every kid who proudly carried their Baby Alive around, it felt like love, laughter, and a tiny touch of real life rolled into one. Your feet sank in. That was the point. Shag carpeting was not just a floor covering, it was a lifestyle. In the 1970s, it was the texture of comfort. The longer the pile, the better. You walked across it barefoot and left behind temporary footprints, like walking in snow. The colors were bold: mustard yellow, avocado green, burnt orange. No shade of beige dared enter. Shag carpet turned a room into a nest. It muted sound, softened footsteps, made even the coldest space feel warm. Kids sprawled out on it to watch cartoons. Teens lounged with magazines, phones in hand, cords stretching into the hallway. Pets disappeared into it. So did crumbs, socks, and secrets. Vacuuming was a nightmare. But no one cared, because shag meant style. It meant you had arrived. It matched your macrame. It matched your couch. It matched your life. Today's floors are sleek, sterile, and hard. But back then, we lived low to the ground, where everything felt softer, even the world. Real lead tinsel on the tree was one of those decorations that made Christmas in the 1970s feel like pure magic. The way it would shimmer when the tree lights flickered just right made living rooms glow with a kind of holiday warmth you simply cannot recreate today. People loved it so much that kids would stand there and gently run the metallic strands through their fingers just to watch them sway, catching every bit of color reflected from the bulbs. LED was not a word anyone thought about then, at least not the way we understand it now. Families were focused on making Christmas beautiful and memorable, and this shiny silver tinsel was the easiest way to do it, without emptying every last penny from the holiday budget. The tinsel never tangled as much as the modern plastic ones do. It hung perfectly straight, and it turned every tree into something out of a winter dream. But of course, now we know better. Today, if you even attempt to sell something like that, you are breaking federal safety regulations and putting yourself on the wrong side of the law. What was once harmless sparkle is now considered a toxic hazard, banned for the sake of health and safety. It is strange how something that made childhood feel so bright can end up on a list of forbidden items. But maybe that is exactly why we remember it so fondly, because it belonged to a world that did not yet fear every little thing. Aluminum and tinsel Christmas trees brought futuristic shimmer to 1980s living rooms. Forget pine needles and sap. These trees were pure spectacle, sparkling silver and glinting under the colored glow of rotating lights. They looked like something out of a space-age Christmas, sleek and proud. They reflected the optimism of the decade, modern, bright, and unafraid to shine. Families gathered around as the color wheel spun slowly, washing the room in waves of red, green, and blue. Kids reached out to touch the branches, amazed at how cold and smooth they felt. Every family had one relative who swore by them, convinced they were cleaner, prettier, and more modern than the old green kind. Children would lie on the carpet just to watch the lights reflect across the ceiling like glittering snow. Decorating them felt different. No smell of pine, but the soft metallic whisper of tinsel instead. Ornaments shone brighter against the silver backdrop, and even simple bulbs looked extravagant. For some, it was the height of style. For others, a sign of the times, an age fascinated by the future. Even without scent or texture, they carried a sparkle that no real tree could rival. They were part of an era that loved glamour, efficiency, and imagination all at once. In their glow, the promise of tomorrow twinkled alongside the warmth of tradition. No matter the opinion, one thing was certain. Once that color wheel started spinning, Christmas had officially arrived. The Magic 8 ball was small, mysterious, and irresistible, the perfect mix of curiosity and suspense that no child or teenager could resist shaking. That glossy black sphere with its floating blue window somehow seemed to hold the answers to life's most important questions. Will I be famous? Does my crush like me? Should I eat the last piece of pie? With every shake, the future felt just within reach. Watching that white triangle drift into view with answers like yes, definitely, or ask again later was a thrill that never faded. It was part toy, part oracle, and part party trick, all rolled into one. What made it so special was not the accuracy of its answers, but the moment it created. The laughter, the teasing, the excited hush as everyone leaned in to see what fate had to say. The Magic 8 Ball turned ordinary afternoons into moments of wonder and decision-making that somehow felt real. You could never quite explain why it felt magical, but it did. It was like holding a secret in your hands, one that spoke back just enough to keep you guessing. Even adults could not resist giving it a shake when no one was looking. Long before smartphones and online quizzes told people who they were meant to be, the Magic 8 Ball had already figured it out. It was not about the answer. It was about the fun of asking. Holiday punch bowls and cheese balls were the twin stars of every grown-up Christmas party. In kitchens across America, tables gleamed under the light of cut glass bowls filled with ruby red punch floating with slices of orange. Nearby, cheese balls rolled in nuts, or parsley sat proudly beside stacks of Ritz crackers. The smell was rich, savory and sweet all at once, and every adult had their own secret recipe. Laughter grew louder with each refill, stories grew taller, and someone always spilled just a little on the tablecloth. Kids peeked in from the hallway, stealing crackers before running off again. These gatherings were more than parties. They were annual reunions, proof that friendship could be as warm as the punch itself. Even now, the sight of that silver ladle or the taste of cheddar mixed with cream cheese can bring the past rushing back. It wasn't about sophistication, it was about celebration, plain and true. The clink of glasses, the glow of the tree, the hum of old records. Together they made the room feel like Christmas itself. As the decade wore on, latex monster masks became the ultimate Halloween flex. You could smell them from across the aisle at Spencer's or the local drugstore. That weird mix of rubber and chemical paint that meant quality. These masks were not the thin plastic kind. They were heavy, realistic, and terrifying. Slip one on, and you were instantly a werewolf, zombie, or melting skull straight out of a nightmare. They were expensive too, so kids often shared them or wore them year after year until the eye holes cracked. The inside always stuck to your face, and after 10 minutes you were sweating like crazy, but it did not matter. These gory rubber masks made you the coolest kid on the block. Adults would jump, little kids would scream, and you would grin behind layers of latex and fake blood. They were hot, smelly, and impossible to breathe in, but no costume made a bigger impression. For a single night, you were the monster, and you loved every second of it. Homemade extension cord octopus plugs for tree lights were one of those wildly creative, wildly unsafe tricks families used without hesitation in the 1970s. You would see a single outlet powering an entire forest of cords behind the tree, all tangled together like someone tried to knit with electricity. These improvised clusters allowed families to plug in the lights, the rotating tree stand, the music box, and maybe even an extra lamp or two. No one worried about overheating or sparks or overloaded circuits. It was simply the only way to make everything work with the limited outlets older homes had. People trusted their instincts, not safety manuals. Today, though, building or using something like that is a clear violation of electrical codes. You can be fined, cited, or required to remove them immediately. Modern power strips have surge protection, insulation rules, and testing certifications because the old methods caused more fires than most families ever knew. The shift feels huge when you think about it. Back then it was creativity. Today it is negligence. But anyone who grew up during those years remembers crouching behind the tree, plugging one more cord into the impossible cluster, hoping it stayed together just long enough to make the living room glow. Animated store window displays turned downtown shopping into a holiday pilgrimage. Before malls took over, families would bundle up, drive to the city, and press their faces against frosted glass to watch moving elves, trains, and glowing reindeer come to life. Each window told a story. Miniature Santa's workshops or cozy living rooms filled with gifts and laughter. Parents hoisted kids onto their shoulders so they could see over the crowd, mittens fogging the glass as everyone gasped in unison. The mechanical whir of tiny motors mixed with carols drifting from hidden speakers. For a few fleeting minutes, everyone outside the glass felt part of the magic inside it. Children would gasp as mechanical snowflakes fell and toy soldiers marched in endless loops. It was theater for the streets, free magic in the middle of winter. The air outside smelled of roasted chestnuts and snow, and carolers often sang nearby. For a few weeks every December, ordinary storefronts became wonderlands, each one competing to outshine the next. The reflections of lights in the windows made the whole city shimmer. It didn't matter if your shoes were wet or your hands were cold. The magic reached you anyway. When you left, the images followed you in the glass of every passing window, as if the spirit refused to fade. When night fell, the lights glimmered like dreams made real. Even today, people remember those window displays not as shopping experiences, but as memories of joy, wonder, and imagination bigger than the glass that held them. Silly Putty might have been the simplest toy ever invented, but it captured the essence of fun better than most. Soft, stretchy, and wonderfully weird, it could bounce like a ball, stretch like gum, or lift newspaper comic prints right off the page. It was science and silliness in one red plastic egg. You could roll it, squeeze it, or twist it into strange shapes. It never lost its charm. There was no right or wrong way to play with Silly Putty, and maybe that was the secret to its success. It encouraged curiosity and creativity, letting kids explore texture, movement, and physics without even realizing it. The squish and pop between your fingers was oddly satisfying, the kind of tactile joy that screens could never replicate. Parents loved it because it was clean. Kids loved it because it was endless. Silly Putty was proof that imagination did not need rules. It just needed something squishy and a pair of willing hands. Decades later, that pink goo still sits on store shelves, ready to stretch its way into new memories. They were not called that at first, but when Catherine Bach stepped onto screens in The Dukes of Hazzard, the name stuck forever. Daisy Dukes, those impossibly short denim shorts, became a symbol of rebellion and summer and just not caring what anyone thought. Girls wore them to feel bold, boys noticed, parents rolled their eyes, but everyone understood their power. In the 1970s, short shorts meant freedom, no fabric dragging you down, just legs and sunshine and the thrill of being young. They were homemade most of the time, cut from old jeans, frayed at the ends, personalized with patches or marker art. They were what you wore when you wanted to feel seen, when you wanted the wind on your skin and music in your ears. Daisy Dukes were more than fashion. They were attitude, a little wild, a little dangerous, and totally unforgettable. Every October morning in the 1980s began with a sugary bowl of Monster cereal. Count Chocula, Boo Berry, and Frankenberry ruled breakfast tables with their pastel marshmallows and spooky mascots. But it was not just the cereal that mattered. It was the box. Kids would flip it over and see cutout masks, monster puzzles, or glow-in-the-dark stickers that made breakfast feel like a mini adventure. Some boxes even came with mail-in offers for collectible toys or posters if you sent in enough box tops. Saturday mornings were spent with milk-stained scissors, cutting out masks that never fit quite right but made you feel like part of the monster crew. These cereal promotions blended sugar, marketing genius, and pure childhood magic. The monsters were not scary. They were funny, friendly, and just the right kind of spooky for kids who were too young for real horror movies. Even the jingles stuck in your head long after Halloween ended. Looking back, it was the perfect mix of fun and flavor, breakfast that doubled as a costume factory. Glass ornament string lights that overheated were practically the heartbeat of Christmas decor in the 1970s. When you plugged them in, the whole house lit up with colors that felt warm, deep, and slightly dramatic, something modern LED lights never quite managed to recreate. The bulbs were thick and glossy, the kind you could tap lightly and hear a tiny clink as if they were miniature ornaments in their own right. Every family had at least one set, sometimes passed down from older relatives who swore by their glow. Of course, those bulbs burned hot enough to toast your fingers if you held them too long, but that was part of the charm. You learned to respect them the same way you respected stovetops or ovens. Today, though, anything that overheats even slightly is pulled off the shelves before it ever reaches a living room. Modern electrical codes ban lights with certain wiring thickness and heat output, and anything with a glass bulb is quietly pushed into the category of retro danger. But those lights had personality. They flickered softly, they hummed ever so slightly, and when one bulb went out, the entire string went dark, sending the family into a comedic treasure hunt to find the culprit. That memory stays warm in a way the lights never did. Homemade popcorn and cranberry garlands were the quiet crafts that filled long December nights. Before endless screen time and tangled lights, families gathered around the kitchen table with a bowl of popcorn, a spool of thread, and patience. Each string told a story, each bead a small act of care. Fingers pricked, popcorn crumbled, and cranberries rolled away, but laughter followed every mishap. The radio played softly, and someone always sang along while threading. It wasn't about perfection, it was about being together in the soft rhythm of creation. Children learned the rhythm of stitching, laughing when kernels broke, proud when their strings stretched across the tree. It was slow work, but that was the point. The stillness felt sacred, the soft chatter and warm lamplight turning the task into memory. The smell of butter and pine filled the air, and even if the garlands drooped or tangled, no one minded. They were proof of time spent together, of love stitched one kernel at a time. Every garland became a handmade memory, destined to outlast the season. The sight of them hanging against the tree lights made even the smallest home feel grand. They were not decorations, they were family woven into color and string. Hanging them on the tree meant more than decoration. It meant family, connection, and the beauty of effort made visible. When the Pong home console arrived under Christmas trees in 1975, families were stepping into a new world of play. It was not flashy, just two white paddles, a tiny square ball, and a beeping sound that echoed through the living room. But it felt revolutionary. For the first time, television screens became more than something to watch. They became something to do. Families gathered around the set, twisting knobs and cheering each time the ball bounced off the edge of the screen. It was simple, but that simplicity was its magic. Parents could play it, kids could master it, and suddenly the idea of gaming became a shared family experience. The glow of the TV light at night, the hum of static, and the sound of laughter mixed with that unmistakable ping. It all felt like the future had arrived. Pong was the beginning of everything that would follow. Arcade culture, home consoles, and the digital playgrounds that now fill our lives. Back then, it was not about graphics or scores. It was about connection. It brought families closer in a new way, uniting generations over competition that was fun, innocent, and endlessly repeatable. It turned living rooms into arenas and made every household feel like it owned a piece of tomorrow. Looking back, Pong wasn't just the first home video game, it was the moment when imagination met technology, and playtime would never be the same again. Every wall had a secret, a pattern, a web of loops and knots that turned ordinary string into art. In the 1970s, macrame was everywhere, plant holders dangling from ceiling hooks, wall hangings framing living room sofas, even jewelry made of twisted twine and wooden beads. It was a texture, a vibe, a mood. Macrame did not just decorate, it grounded a room. It brought nature indoors with neutral tones and hand-woven charm. Making it was part of the experience. You did not buy it, you made it. You sat on shag rugs, fingers tangled in cord, following patterns copied from dog-eared magazines. It was slow work, meditative, like knitting for the soul. You felt the tension in your hands loosen as the knots took shape. It was earthy, imperfect, personal. Every piece told a story. Every twist was deliberate. Parents did it. Teenagers did it. Even kids got in on the action, making tiny hangings for their bedroom corners. Macrame felt alive, like something passed down rather than mass-produced. Today, we hang prints and posters, we decorate with apps. But macrame was proof that art could be quiet, slow, and made by hand. That your walls could hold something soft, something you made. In the 1980s, no Halloween decoration was complete without those delicate paper honeycomb pumpkins. They came folded flat in plastic sleeves, waiting for the moment you would pull them open and fasten the tiny paperclip to hold their round shape. Suddenly, you had a full 3D pumpkin, or a black cat with a bow tie, ready to sit proudly on the kitchen table. The tissue paper was so thin it tore if you looked at it too hard, yet every family had at least one that somehow survived, year after year. The smell of dusty cardboard and old paper was unmistakable when you pulled it from the decorations box each October. These honeycomb crafts gave homes that cozy, low-budget charm that only 1980s Halloween could perfect. They hung from ceiling fans, school windows, and office bulletin boards, glowing orange under fluorescent lights. No one cared that they were fragile or cheap. They were part of the ritual. That simple act of unfolding paper and watching a flat shape become something magical felt like the true start of the season. They were the humble heart of Halloween decorating, bright, delicate, and unforgettable. If these forgotten Christmas traditions stirred a memory or a smile, share your stories in the comments, tap like to keep the nostalgia alive, and subscribe so you never miss another trip into the holiday magic we left behind.